Hello, and welcome to the Northwest Yearly Meeting podcast. I am one of your co hosts, Jacob.
And I'm your other co host, Austin. And thanks for joining us in listening to our podcast, where we're having conversations with people all around the evangelical friends world about all sorts of topics, trying to navigate, what does it look like to be a friend in modern times?
We hope that you enjoy listening to these and that these conversations are beneficial to you as they come out every single month.
Thank you and enjoy today's episode.
All right, welcome everybody, and Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, all that time. Happy late Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was just a few days ago here, but yeah, we are entering into a busy time of year, and I mean, you can even see from this episode is coming out a few days late. I mean, I don't think we've ever really upfront publicized our schedule. I mean, although you can probably figure out that we try to release on the first of the month every month, but this is going to be coming out a few days past that now, and that's just the time of year we're in right now with Christmas and Thanksgiving and travel and shopping and all the stuff that goes with December. So thanks for bearing with us here. But yeah, thanks for joining us on the Northwest Yearly Meeting podcast. Me and Austin are here today to talk a little bit about Christmas stuff and Advent.
Yeah, I mean, last year we talked about simplicity
Hmm.
and and we kind of had a kind of stripped down episode and we kind of pondered those things. And I really like Christmas and I really like Advent um and it's something that I always look forward to every year and I think a lot about. As you know, as a pastor, I like often have an Advent series and I kind of think about it. And like it's kind of funny though because it's like as friends we don't use the church calendar in the sense that like it's not required or anything like
Hmm.
that, but I do think it's helpful to take time and to seasonally rethink about things as as a way of how does that incorporate into our like everyday life, because it's like, because the truth is you can't think about everything all at once.
Hmm.
And so I think it's nice to have kind of a rhythm to thinking about certain things. And I always like the rhythm of thinking about the Christmas story and the lessons that it might have for us for, the rest of the year, as we can kind of like digest these things. And it's one of those stories that you can kind of meditate on like your whole life and
Yeah.
get new sort of insights.
Yeah.
Um,
I was actually, it's kind of funny you say that too. Like when you say Quakers or Friends don't really use the church calendar, but I think, um, at least all the Friends churches I've been a part of and been to, like when it comes to Christmas time, then suddenly we do get on, we talk about Advent, we talk about whatever. And I think I'm not saying that in a negative way. I think in a sense that's to be expected. Um, for lack of a better term, I was actually hearing someone talk the other day. They were a pastor and they were telling somebody else like tips for like a Christmas Eve. They were telling like a new pastor, like some tips for a Christmas Eve service and what they do at their church and blah blah blah. And the more experienced pastor kind of basically said like, listen, you don't need to get fancy on Christmas Eve. People are coming for one thing. Like they just, they want the candlelight service, they want to sing Silent Night, they want to hear a brief little spiel on the birth of Jesus. Like you don't need to reinvent the wheel for Christmas Eve. Like everyone, Christmas is a time of like nostalgia and people like to listen to the old songs and watch the old movies. And so he was kind of saying like same goes for Christmas Eve. Like everyone is expecting a certain thing for Christmas Eve. Just give them what they're expecting and call it a day. And I think that's kind of the same in a way, like you could use that with this series of Advent. Like you as a pastor, or some people might be thinking like, should I do a 4 week series on Advent again? We've done that for the last 10 years on Christmas. But I think there's something to that, to just like taking this time to like recenter on those things and refocus on them. Um,
well, and the thing that I love about Advent is it does actually, the themes around Advent do touch on themes that are central to Quaker spirituality
Mm,
and Friends spiritual practice. In particular, the one that like I think about is the kind of the theme of waiting.
mm,
Um, Advent is known for being about a season of waiting expectantly, right? That we are expecting Christ to come. Or like, well, and it's kind of funny because it's like Advent. We also kind of live in this. There's like all these paradoxes with Advent because it's like we live in the in between times of Jesus's first coming and his second coming, and so we like you know, we look to the past and we look to the future, but then they kind of also simultaneously talk about our current experience
yeah.
where we're receiving Christ now. And so it's, there's you can think about time and it's just like,
Yeah, it's all over.
God's God's working in all of it and but there is this theme of waiting for Christ to come and to receive him and then also to and be waiting, which is like that's like kind of one of the major hallmarks of friends spiritual practice, right? Is like we take time to wait upon the Lord,
Mm,
right? And so like what a good way to like start thinking about this each year to kind of take time and be like, waiting is important and 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 how to kind of expectantly wait. I
yeah.
think is one of those it's always just a time where it's like, I love Christmas presents and I like waiting. I don't like waiting, but it's like always like there's this anticipation of like I want to rush through Christmas season, but I'm like also like I have to like, I have to like pull back, right?
Yeah.
And I know my kids like they're like chomping at the bit. And I'm like, "No, you got to wait. You got to wait. Can't tell us what you got for each other for Christmas. We're not going to put things under the tree. We're going to take our time."
Hmm. Yeah. It is interesting. Like speaking of kids, like so obviously I have a 2.5 year old, and so I mean he's had other Christmases, but I feel like he's at the age now where like he gets it. In years past, he was just too young, I guess. But like, yeah, recently we've had stuff showing up to the door, like some stuff that we've ordered, and they just come in the Amazon boxes or whatever. And so he'll see the delivery person drop it off out there, and he's like, "Ooh, we got a package." And I'm like, "Yeah, we did." And in, months past, if we get a package in September or we get a package in August, like I'll just grab it right then and open it and show him what's inside, whether it's for me or him or whatever. He just likes opening the box. So that's kind of a new thing right now where he's like, "Oh, we just got a package." And I'm like, "Yeah, uh-huh." And he's like, "Let's open it." And I know that it's a Christmas gift for him inside. So I'm like, "We can't open this one right now." And he's like, "What? Why can't we open it?" And I'm like, "We just gotta wait for this one." And so yeah, having those conversations about like waiting, and sure, it'd be fun to just open the gift right now and give it to him and he'd be excited. But yeah, that expectancy of Christmas is something um, that is unique around Christmas because I think we do live in a culture that's a lot of right now of like just get it, open it, do the thing. You don't have to wait for anything.
Oh no,
But
we don't have to wait for
yeah,
anything anymore. Like, thanks to Amazon,
yeah,
like, I mean, the idea of just like, oh, I have to wait for, more than 2 days to receive something that I need, or I should say this,
something I want.
something that I want, like, and I have to like, because I remember the days when it's like the internet took forever
Mm.
to work, right? Do you remember those days
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
where it was just like you'd get on and it would just be like you'd hear the dial-up tone and it took forever to like load a single page, but like that was just normal. You just like I just have to wait, or it was normal when packages took 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 days, and
Hmm.
nowadays it's like if your package is not like there in a day or 2 days, you're like, where is it? Um, and I think that and with that, I think that there is this pressure then that we put in our spirituality that like that we're going to grow immediately, right?
Mm.
Or God's going to show up immediately, or, we're not going to be put into seasons where it's going to take a long time for God to
Yeah.
show up or for there to be an answer, or that, our prayers might not be, fulfilled right then and there. And I think that's really hard for us, at
Yeah.
least in like, you know, 21st century Northwest sort of people. I mean, this might be different in different like locations, right? But I think that we struggle with this like unfulfillment
Mm.
that I think we experience all the time,
Yeah.
right? Like God doesn't answer the prayer to get healed, or having to wait anxiously for that doctor's phone call. Um, you know,
Hmm.
um, in that kind of that is stressful.
Yeah. Yeah. And it like, I mean, for me, I'm just thinking about like the first, so like the 4 weeks or themes of Advent, you have like hope, peace, love, and joy.
Hmm.
And those are, I believe, in the order there typically. And so once again, yesterday, if your church follows this kind of stuff, yesterday would have been the first week. So would have been hope, and maybe they would have preached on that, or maybe they would have had a little mini thought on that before open worship or something. But yeah, so for me, that's the one that's just in my head right now, just because just being at church yesterday and having them talk about hope and all that kind of stuff, and the expectant waiting. Like, going back to your what you're saying there, like we pray for things sometimes and it doesn't happen or whatever. It just really makes me like think and ruminate on that word hope a little bit more, and just like, what does it mean when we hope for something, when we're longing for something, um, and what does it do to us, or what is our response when the thing that we were hoping for either doesn't happen, or maybe doesn't happen in the time frame that we were wanting.
Hmm.
um yeah, and I think like, yeah, that's an interesting one that
Well,
we have to
and
wrestle
and
with.
and we'll hope you can kind of think of it as like wishful thinking or confidence, right?
Mm,
And I think oftentimes we treat God as if as kind of a wish fulfillment, right?
yes.
And so it's kind of like an optimistic sort of thing versus confidence that God's going to do something, right? And
Hmm.
so when you see like, and this kind of like to root us back into the biblical story, this is when you get into like John the Baptist, right? Where he is this fulfillment of a promise that God made like super long time ago, right?
Yeah.
That people had been waiting for the Messiah, and the prophets foretold this, and it was like hundreds of years before like, God's gonna like show up on the scene and to, save his people. And you kind of get this vibe when, you know, let me pull this up in Luke when Zechariah can finally speak again. He sings his song or his prophecy, and um, he talks about you know he talks about God fulfilling his promise from long ago. It says that we may be saved from our enemies and from the hands of all who hate us, to show the mercy promised to our fathers, and to remember his holy covenant, the oath swore to our father Abraham, to grant us that we may be delivered from the hands of our enemies. And so it's like, you see this deliverance being played out, but this deliverance took not just like one generation or two
Yeah.
generations or three generations. It took like several.
Hmm.
And John got to kind of make the way for that deliverance, right? Like that was kind of his destiny, his vocation to 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 bring this all about, right?
Yeah.
And so you kind of get this interesting thing, and I think this to kind of like tie the two thoughts together of like waiting and hope and John the Baptist making way is just like we live in a time, or it's like it reminds me of the Quaker phrase of proceed as way the way opens or proceed as way opens,
Hmm.
and it you kind of get the sense of like learning to wait upon God and not to move hastily. There's like a quote by Philip Gully here that I think is a good kind of explanation of this. If you've never heard of this, of to proceed as way open means to wait for guidance and to avoid hasty judgment or action, to wait for future circumstances to help solve a problem. The spiritual guidance may come in time of seeking or entirely unexpected, bringing a suggestion for a previously unseen action. So we often try to force our way through life, determined to do this thing or that thing, believing that this is the right path, but uncertain on how best to proceed. And in our passion to reach our goal, we sometimes act rashly, giving little thought to the consequences. When we don't wait for a way to open, we seek no guidance, and we fail to listen to that of God. And we do not consult our conscience. We don't listen to others or to our best instincts. And then, because the way doesn't open up soon enough to suit us, we bulldoze our way through, acting hastily before all the pieces are put in place to ensure a good outcome. And I wonder if like, God waited so that there would be, you know, the perfect outcome. And like how often do we just like want to like bulldoze our way through, um like we want God to deliver on our timetable, so we do whatever we want to like make the way, but like how
Hmm.
often does that like, doesn't work out for us.
Yeah. Yeah. How often is that the reality? Yeah. It's very interesting. I mean, even just thinking about like Jesus being born, like right now, Christmas time, that's the image you see a lot in the religious side of it for sure. Like the manger scene, the wise men, all that kind of stuff. Um, but even that, like if you're talking about just that moment, like I mean, I actually I wonder, I actually don't know. I assume I was just about to say, Mary had to wait 9 months. I assume the Immaculate Conception behaved like normal timetables, and that she was pregnant for 9 months. So even that, like to get to that picture, to get to that scene right there of being in the manger and Jesus being born and Jesus being there, what we focus on at Christmas time, like that's a 9 month waiting period for that. And
Hmm.
like we don't even going back to Christmas, like it's hard for some of us to wait 3 weeks, 4 weeks to Christmas Day, to get to what we're wanting to celebrate for Christmas. But imagine, um, much to the chagrin of a lot of people who think Christmas music starts too early every year, like imagine they start playing Christmas music in like March and be like, a 9 month preparation to celebrate the birth of Jesus.
I don't know if I could do
That
that.
would be a long, a long, but yeah, just to get in that mindset. And then even further beyond that, like you're saying, like, I mean, people in the Old Testament waiting for this Messiah, waiting for this person to come and save them. Like, you know, from the Old Testament to the New Testament is just the flip of one page in our Bibles, but that's hundreds of years of waiting. And like you said, generations that were waiting and hoping for that and didn't see it in their lifetime. So
Well,
it just puts it in perspective.
and it's just like the Old Testament's just full of stories of people who they can't wait upon God, right? Like that's like the whole thing. Like they want to choose to do their own actions, right?
Yeah.
It's Abraham trying to fulfill his promise on his own way. So, him and Sarah plot to have a baby through Hagar. That didn't
Hmm.
that didn't really work very well. Um, that's it was pretty awful.
Yeah.
And I think in the Bible is like pointing out the awfulness, right? Like Adam and Eve couldn't wait for wisdom from God, so they took it on their own terms. And look at the mess that we're all in now.
Hmm.
And it's just we're so quick to kind of plow our way through, and not. wait upon God. But similarly, as we wait upon God, we kind of create space in our lives for Him to prepare the way,
Mm,
right? So there's kind of this paradox of like, you know, her like waiting for God, but then also waiting for God to open the way. It's like
mm,
it's kind of a, I don't know, it's just been something that I've just been thinking about recently, and kind of meditating on through this Advent season of
yeah.
just like of because like you know John preparing the way seems very active and in waiting seems very passive, but I don't think that they're opposites here.
Right. Yeah, and in the same sense, like, I mean, we see this a lot in like Jesus' teachings and whatever, like talking about the kingdom of heaven coming to earth and whatever, but by no means is he saying or instructing people to just sit around and twiddle their thumbs and wait for the kingdom of heaven to like show up one day on their doorstep. Like, there is like this call and action item for us to kind of make that be so, right? And so, like, yes, we're waiting for his return. We're waiting for things on earth to be like they are in heaven, but also we can be an active participant in helping to usher those things along. It'd
Well,
be
I think that's
nice. It'd be nice to
yeah.
just, I mean, sometimes you may want to just seclude yourself off from the world and be like, I'm just going to wait for Jesus to come back. But that's not what we're called to.
No. So maybe this holiday season you can think about maybe the ways that God's calling you to wait on on him,
Mm,
but then also just ways to kind of prepare for him, right? Like what is the what are you being called to do? I think is a good question. Um and even just like internally of just like how do you prepare the way through waiting? Because there's like all
mm,
this noise that we live with
yeah.
and I think this noise gets heightened in Christmas.
Mm, for sure. It makes me think. Um, One of my favorite Christmas movies that I like try to watch, or I do watch every year. It's like the one that I have to watch is Christmas with the Cranks. Have you ever seen that?
Yes,
Tim Allen and I'm blanking on her name right now.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis. Yeah, so like that's kind of them. They like get into this spot, mainly him, but she goes along with it of like, their kids are out of the house now and he's like, I just don't want to do this anymore. It's too much noise, too much spending. Like let's just forget Christmas and not do it. And then spoiler alert for a 20-year-old movie, like last minute, basically Christmas Eve, their daughter's like, actually I'm gonna come home from college for Christmas. And then they have to like scramble to get all this stuff together. And then he kind of has a change of heart and realizes like, you know, Christmas, obviously I'm just looking at it from a negative perspective of we spend this much money and we do all this um and yes, there is an element of spending money and doing that kind of stuff. And we like we said, we talked about that last time. There's different ways to celebrate Christmas without spending money and getting caught up in the consumeristic side of things. But yeah, that to just focus on not getting caught up in that and trying to see what Christmas is really about, and sitting and waiting in those kind of things rather than what the world tries to tell us it's all about.
Well, I think we're gonna wrap it up this year.
Yep.
So we will see all y'all in the new year.
Yes, we will. Merry Christmas. Once again, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to share it with others. Please rate and review the podcast so others can find it.